Let's just explain the double neighbor a little bit more. It's hard to keep straight in our minds the double neighbor sound versus the cambiata sound. They both involve directional going either up or down of a whole step with a leap of a third between beats 2 and 3, and it's hard to keep them straight. So the double neighbor sounds suspiciously like the ending of Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast. That's how the song ends, right? Now look at the penultimate bar of this piece. You'll see that in the bottom. It doesn't go down to Beast. It goes up to Beast. So you have Beauty, skip a third, and the go up to Beast, and that's your double neighbor. Whereas the cambiata would have been Beauty and the Beast. It would have gone down a second, then the skip of the third, and then up. That's the cambiata, but the double neighbor is up, then skip down, and then go up. So if it sounds like Beauty and the Beast, it's a double neighbor figure. And that's how you keep them straight. There's actually another double neighbor figure in bar 2. Look at the left hand, There's actually another double neighbor in bar 2. Look at the bass clef part. E, F, G, E, F. So there you go, up a step. He skips down a third, and then he went up and up, and that's the double neighbor figure. Okay, let's sing this one together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Double neighbor. Another one. And here we go. Beauty and the Beast. Now, when I said, oh, there's another one, I was referring to bar 8. Let's start with bar 7. Okay, now listen to the bottom part. This is cambiata. It goes up a second and a skip and then down. So that's your cambiata there. Wow, this one had a lurking cambiata that I did not realize on first glance. How wonderful. Okay, now let's examine the possible combinations of consonant and dissonant patterns that can happen on beats 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, beat 1 is easy to remember because it always has to be consonant. But the dissonant note can appear either on beats 2, 3, or 4. So it's interesting to see the patterning that we have. So look up at the top where it says passing tones. We have 5, 4, 3, 5. So the dissonance happened on beat 2 in this case. Next bar. Okay, now the dissonance happened on beat 2. Okay, let's go over a bar line. So now it happened on beat 4. Okay, now stop the recording right here for a minute. I want you to finish labeling the rest of this page, labeling using the C for consonant and D for dissonant interval. So what I want you to do right now is finish writing in any missing interval numbers for the few bars down there at the bottom, and then put the patterning in of C, D, C, C, or whatever it is. So we can get some data down to see what are the common spots where the dissonances will occur. Now when you finish this, then you can continue on with the rest of the presentation, and I will have the answer key for you. All right, welcome back. Now we've got the answer key for this. Now, do you remember a few slides ago where I mentioned the double passing tone figure where you can have a dissonance on beats 2 and 3, and it only happens with perfect fourth and diminished fifth intervals? Well, here it is. 6, D5, 4, 3. And you can hear the resolution wants to go right to there, right? So that is the only possibility where you can have two dissonances in a row, not including cambiatas or double neighbor figures, which break that rule. But otherwise, C, D, D, C can only happen with these intervals, 6, D5, 4, 3 in a passing. Or you can reverse the direction, 3, 4, D5, 6. Okay? All right, the next line places it on beat 4, 6, 5, 3, 4. And then you go to the next line, 6, 7, 8. And by the time we compile all this, we find at the bottom of the page that there are 5 possibilities. You can have all consonants in the bar. You can have the dissonance come on beats 1, beats 2, beats 3, or the special double passing figure where it can happen on beats 2 and 3 in the interior of the measure if the intervals are as shown above. 6, diminished 5, 4, and 3, or it could be in the opposite direction, but that's the only way if it involves a diminished fifth and a perfect fourth. Okay? Basic rules of third species. The first note in the measure must be consonant. That's just a carryover from first species. You already know this. Number 2, the remaining 3 notes can employ passing tones. That comes from second species, or neighbor tones. This is new to third species. Number 3, you may begin your exercise with a quarter rest if you like. Now, we have been starting our counterpoint in first species and in second species right on beat 1. But in third species, they give you a little bit of freedom. You have 2 choices now. You can either start your part that you are writing on beat 1, or you can go rest, da, 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 like that. Okay? Now, your first interval still must be either a perfect fifth or a perfect unison or a perfect octave. Some of the sources, I should mention that the historical sources don't always agree on this, and some of the sources said you could also start on a third, but let's not do that. Let's just keep our options narrowed down. You can either start on a P1, a P5, or a P8, and that's it for what we are doing. Let's go to number 4. As in second species, no unison on beat 1 in the phrase, and no perfect fifths or perfect octaves on consecutive first beats of measures. In other words, if you did something like this, octave, 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 that's not going to work here. So you can't have them on consecutive first beats. It's just too strong. Okay, rule number 4. As in second species, no unison on beat 1 in the phrase. Just don't do that. Beat 1 you have to treat carefully. And no perfect fifths or perfect octaves on consecutive first beats. So you can't have like a P5 in measure 1 on beat 1 and then have a P5 in measure 2 on beat 1. Okay? Which kind of the way this is written is a little bit nebulous with reading number 5 here. Parallel perfect fifths or perfect octaves on strong beats 1 and 3 must be more than 4 quarter notes apart. Okay, this is new for third species. So that means if you have like on beat 1 of bar 1 a perfect eighth, then the earliest you could have a perfect eighth would have to be on beat 2 of bar 2, because you would have to separate them by 4 quarter notes apart, which prevents you from ever putting them on successive downbeats. Because successive downbeats only have beats 2, 3, and 4 in the middle. That's only 3 beats in the middle. You have to have at least 4 to separate them. Look at the bottom of the page. There are some abbreviations that you may see on this page that are a little different than the ones we use. So CPT equals counterpoint. That's the part of the exercise that you are going to write or you are going to create. And the CF, I think you know that one already. That stands for cantus firmus. Cantus refers to singing, and that would be the melodic portion of the phrase. And firmus stands for fixed or firm. So in other words, it's the given melody that you have to write a counterpoint to, okay? Let's look at this exercise in minor mode. Minor modes are special. We know the natural minor has a lowered 6 and 7 scale degree. But it's traditional to, when you're approaching a final cadence, to raise 6 and 7. And that's what we always do, only in the figures leading up to the final cadence. Usually that happens in the penultimate bar. But you'll notice in this particular exercise, I've circled F sharp in the last line in the note on beat 4 right before the penultimate bar starts. that F sharp also has to be raised because it's hooked to that whole figure. So when you hear it, you'll understand what I mean. Pick your part you want to sing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right here, you have to raise it F sharp, even that far back. Beauty and the Beast. The reason why is, let's go 3 bars before the end. If I don't sharp the F, then I get F natural to G sharp, and that's the augmented second. We don't really use augmented intervals here. We're trying to smooth out the melody, and that is why. All right, now I want you to sing the numbers, but notice that I put in P for passing and N for neighbor on all of the 2s, 4s, and 7s. We have to identify how those dissonant intervals function. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So this is the double neighbor figure right there. 7 is neighbor. 2 is passing. 9 is passing. 9 is passing. 7 is passing. This is neighbor. Now freeze right there. That is a double neighbor figure that I forgot to label right there. Oh no, that's the cambiata, excuse me, because it went up a step, leaped up a third, and came back down. So in bar 8, you could put a cambiata there. Let's start on bar 7, second line, okay? Here's our pitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's a passing, neighbor, and now the cambiata figure. Okay, now although in measure 8, that is the cambiata figure construction, 6 to 5 to 3, those are all consonant intervals, so they didn't really draw attention to the ear. And so we're only concerned mostly with the dissonant intervals because they're the ones that add the interest. Now you notice in this exercise, I labeled the interval numbers down the center of the stave, so you always need to do that. This will help you check your work as well. You count the numbering from the bottom staff up to the top staff. I can't say that enough. Bottom staff going up to the top staff. That is how you derive the numbers, not the other way around. Okay? Second dot, both dissonant upper and lower neighbors are permissible in third species. As a rule, it is best to use neighbor notes that are a half step rather than a whole step away. And remember, no leaping to or from a dissonance in third species is allowed, except when you use the double neighbor, the cambiata, and I didn't mention this in the presentation, but there is an inverted cambiata. It's just the exact opposite shape of the cambiata at the end of your exercises when you're going to a cadence point. So for now, just use the double neighbor figure when you're writing the exercises because the double neighbor, statistically speaking, occurs about 95 out of 100% of the time. It's most popular and easiest to work with. Now this is what you are going to be doing for your homework exercises. This is an example of how to do it. So you'll be given something to analyze. And then for your quiz, you're going to write one of these. But first we have to analyze them. So I want to talk now, we see there's a key signature in this mode. Now the white keys on the piano correspond to the natural mode, C to C, Ionian, D to D, Dorian, etc. But it's more common now to use transposed mode so that you don't only have to start Aeolian on the note A. In this case, it's on the note G. Here's how I got that. I could see the first note and the last note of the contus were G, so that was Do, and there's 2 flats, B flat and E flat. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Well, that's natural minor, Aeolian modes. So this transposed mode is G Aeolian mode instead of A Aeolian mode. So that's what a transposed mode means. It's not anything to be afraid of. Okay, so then the next step is I went and I put all the numbers in. 8, 5, 6, same with me. 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 8, 6. It's really 13, but use the don't use the compound versions above 10 because it's too hard to calculate. So this is 6, D5, 4, 3, 3, 4, 3, 6, 6, 8, 7, 6, 6, 7, 8, 6. Here comes Beauty and the Beast. 6, 7, 5, 6, 8. Yeah, if your numbering system goes above 10, if you start going 11, 12, 13, don't do that. Use these simple rather than the compound numbers. All right, after you've done that, now I look for the numbers 2s, 4s, 7s. There's a 9 in bar 3. That's a compound 2. So any of those numbers that are dissonant, now I'm going to label how they function, okay? So in bar 2, this 4 is a passing. The 9 is passing. And here's the double neighbor coming down. Diminished 5 and the 4 are both in passing motion on the weak beat, so that is allowed. That's a neighbor, dissonant neighbor. Here's a dissonant passing. This 7 coming up is passing. And this incomplete neighbor and another one form the double neighbor. Now, the contus in letter A was on the bottom. Now we're going to use the same contus on the top, and now you got a voice underneath it. Okay? So let's do the same thing here. 8, 6, 7, 10, 9, 8, 10. I want to talk about bar 2 for a minute because I see this issue of calculating the intervals correctly is a perennial problem in this configuration with the contus on the top and the bass note underneath it. Okay, so I have a G, let's start measure 1. I have a G3 and an octave under it. And remember, you're going to calculate from your bottom note, so that's 8. And now at B flat up to G is a 6, A up to G is a 7, bar 2. Got a B flat on the bottom and a D on the top. Okay, that's the compound third. So I went 10. If the note's getting higher in the bass line, it's in essence shrinking the interval size from the bottom. So it's 10, 9, 8, 10. Let's keep going. 6, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, augmented fourth, third, 3, 10, 9, 8, 10, 8, 9, 8, 6, 7, 8, 10, 10, 9, 11, 10, and 8. Okay, now we analyze our data, and you're looking for the dissonant intervals, the 2s, the 4s, the 7s, and the compound versions of those, and you have to describe what they do. So measure 1, 8, 6. This 7 is neighbor. This 9 is passing. Bar 3, 6, 5, 6. A passing 7. Bar 4. Passing augmented fourth. And passing 9. 9 is passing. 6, 7, 8, 10, 9. Skip down to 11, 10. I kind of broke my rule there because there is an 11, but I figured that's easy enough to see it rather than go 10, 9, 4, 10 didn't make sense. This way you can see that you've done a jump down to 11 and then stepwise back up. I should mention that I will provide an answer key for you on the previous slide so you can check your homework to see if you did it right. You can self-check that. If you have any questions, that is the point where if you can't figure out what's going on, then contact me and we can go over it together, all right? But I will provide that answer key to you. Now here is the quiz. This is where you get to be creative and compose your own third species counterpoint exercise. I prefer to think of this not as composition torture, but rather as a fun game. It's really a game, and it's a lot of fun to try to write one of these out. It's like a puzzle game, okay? So for more specific details that I'm giving you here in this presentation, I will post them in the third species quiz. I'm also going to give you an extra day because this presentation was not posted on Tuesday. It was posted on Wednesday. And also this week is 1 week short because of the holiday when we started. So you'll have a little bit longer to do this. Don't worry, okay? Now, remember that the basic idea of third species is that you are now given more freedom to use dissonance in a controlled environment. And this allows you to write a dissonant interval in a metrically appropriate spot. We're talking about beats 2, 3, and 4. Now remember that no dissonances are ever allowed on the downbeat in first, second, or third species. However, in third species, you can use dissonances on beats 2, 3, and 4 of a measure as long as the dissonance is either a neighbor or a passing tone. You may not leap in or out of a dissonance. The only exceptions to that rule, of course, are if you write a nota cambiata figure or a double neighbor figure. Otherwise, you cannot leap in and out of a dissonance. Now remember that the minor type modes of Aeolian and Dorian have to end Ti-Do in one voice and Re-Do in the other one, always. Also remember, we saw this in an earlier exercise today, that if scale degree 6 directly precedes scale degree 7, then you have to go La, Ti, Do, instead of lay, ti, do, because you don't want that augmented second, so you la, ti, do. So go back to slide 22 if you need to review that. Now, don't write in Phrygian, because Phrygian mode traditionally is an exception to that rule. And it always ends with te, do. It never goes ti, do at the end. So don't worry about Phrygian mode. I'm not giving you anything in Phrygian mode, and don't you write one in Phrygian mode, and you'll be fine for the purposes of this quiz. And remember that all the other rules from first and second species still apply in third species. Good luck, and have fun, and feel free to contact me anytime if you have any questions or concerns.